Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. So last time we did F14 Tomcat, it was a fine table, but ran into kind of a problem of having some bad design concepts and not really having much of a goal other than to shoot one ramp over and over again. Today we're playing Victory, which apparently is a racing game. I feel like we've done a racing game before, and I'm not talking about high speed, uh, which was running from the cops racing. Hmm, maybe we haven't, because there's like firepower. Yeah, you can kind of see here we're still have a lot of tables here that are very generic, and this might be very much a selection bias because, uh, again, if you're going to license a pinball table that is based off, say, a Disney property, which undoubtedly there must have been a Disney pinball table that existed at some point, then you would have to now, in emulating it, get the license from either Williams, Bailey, Stern, Gottlieb, whoever created the table, and also they would probably have to help you negotiate a secondary license for all the Disney characters. So instead, it's way easier to get a standalone intellectual property that doesn't have any licensed content in it, like Victory, and then just have Pinball Arcade license that. Because yeah, some of these tables definitely don't feel like they would be your first pick or even second pick, unless they're just tables I haven't seen and other people have seen. It is very possible that each individual pinball fan's experience with pinball is very different because you probably over your lifetime really will only see at most 100 tables, probably a lot less than that, closer to 20, even if you're actively seeking out pinball tables. Now, if you go to a big convention where there's tons of pinball tables or a big arcade that collects a bunch of them, that changes. But otherwise, just in a random arcade, your life experience is going to be very different, which is very different from video games. Like anybody that had an NES probably played Super Mario Brothers 1. Nearly everybody. And of the 400 plus games that were released for the NES, I imagine the top 100 were seen or played by most of the people that did have an NES, or at least the top 20. Moving on, Victory 1987. This auto racing themed table was designed by John Trudeau. It was the first table to use a fully screened photorealistic vitrograph mylar overlay for its playfield rather than an industry standard silk screen on the wood itself, which interesting. I wonder how well the silk screen versus a mylar overlay uh, would last. I imagine the truth of the matter is both tables probably had a thick protective coating of resin over it, but over time I imagine whatever like protective coating may have worn off. Uh, Players are challenged with finishing race by completing specific shots representing checkpoints on the track. Players screech around corners, over and under ramps on an adventure to the finish line. Load your weapons, check your equipment, and start your engines. What weapons? Why would there be weapons in a racing game? That seems crazy. 3,315 units of this table were produced, so not a major amount of production run. I don't have any pro versions for this one. So I can see it has the slanted standing targets like Sorcerer did, which I don't like. There's a lot of lights uh, and a lot going on in the table. A lot of plastic. Hmm. On the right of the standing targets, there seems to be a where you load the ball, which is weird because that gasoline alley basically means that it's gonna spit you out towards the flippers, which could mean a lot of random drains. Yeah, you're gonna have to react fairly quickly on that right flipper to hit the ball back up. There's an upper play field with some more drop targets and a right flipper. There seems to be 2 ramps, but then also a center lane shot, which I don't even know how you would reach that center lane shot. Seems like what you have to do is shoot the ramp from the upper play field to get into that center lane. That must be where the multi-ball locks. Let's see. It's surprising that we're not getting any sound effects in this attract mode. I would think that there would be something to that. Much like the F14 Tomcat table, this feels like a table that might overvalue speed. So there might be a problem with that. Looks like we might have a kickback, maybe a ball saver. If it is a ball saver, this would be the second table to have a ball saver, since it was just introduced in F14 Tomcat and didn't even really work as well as one would like. Let's see what the flyer looks like before we start. Scale everything up. This is a funny phrase. Gottlieb, the premier name in pinball. Premier does not mean good. It just means it's the first time you see it. It seems like premium would be the right word to use there. That unless there was a different meaning for the word premier that I've never heard of. But yeah, this flyer is pretty awful because you have one side, which I would assume that the picture is the front side, just showing you a drawing, and then the other side giving you some bullet lists and showing a picture of a building. I wonder if maybe Premier was a famous race car company? Yeah, without knowing that, that makes no sense. Our standard goals are to complete the race, complete the field targets, score the checkpoint bonus, complete the finish targets, and score at least 10 million points, which that sounds like a really high amount. So this must be a fairly high scoring game. Honestly, I probably wouldn't mind if the table or all tables didn't play music and just flash lights in attract mode. But you run the risk of arcades becoming like libraries, which that would be a weird feeling experience. And I think probably by 87 there was plenty of old tables that would have always been around to make noise. And by 87 I imagine a gimmick sound effect would not really attract somebody to actually play a table if they weren't interested in playing a table. I've accidentally hit the skin change button, so I'm playing with a weird skin again, which I don't believe the skins were ever sold separately. I think they came in part with the other purchasable parts. We're getting checkpoints. And there's a fur. Yep, I knew that was going to drain out. The ball actually doesn't launch where I thought it did. But there is a decent number of avenues to get into these drop-down targets that then kick back up into launchers. And that area does, that spinner reverse ramp does kind of suck. Interesting, the out lane sent it back to the launcher. How did it do that? I should have nudged that. I knew I should have nudged that.
Checkpoint 4.
This is one of those tables that makes it fairly obvious I'd have to do more research to figure out what I'm trying to do. So is there just no out lane on the right side? It looks like there is one, but I'm not really sure how to hit it. The left lane shots seem to be incredibly better than the right lane shots, where using the left flipper should pretty much just be reserved to flipping the ball back to the right flipper. And I guess as you progress in the challenges, you would move, that was another one I should have nudged, you would move the white race car in the center around. This is a table that definitely needs that pro mode exploration. Doing a fairly bad job there. I got 1,000,000. So just do 10 times better than that, which should be not that hard. I kind of wish that there was a way to lock out the skins so one doesn't accidentally select them. But I assume a lot of that has to do with just the way the controller is mapped. Because if I was using an actual pinball simulated arcade buttons, I bet you might not run into that problem. Although you might, because I'm not really seeing a lot of different button customizations that you can enable.
Checkpoint 2.
Is there an actual skill shot with this, or do you always just want to hit it the hardest so it goes in the middle there and then lines up? I mean, honestly, that shot and that loop alone, if you can just keep on doing this every single time with really high accuracy and not have the ball bounce back to you, that's probably the shot you want to actually pull off. Whereas doing anything else runs the risk of putting you in a different place, which runs the risk of the ball being in danger of draining. Of course, doing that same shot over and over again may just be scoring you 1,000 points. And sometimes that is just how pinball tables break down, is that you might just want to take the safe shot and bask in safety versus taking a more dangerous shot. Hitting the slanted
Checkpoint 2.
mid-table standing targets seems to only really increase your score multiplier, which seems to hold over per ball. So on the first ball, you should try and spell finish 4 times, which that's a lot. That's 6 drop targets on top of, or 6 standing targets on top of the 4 on the upper play field, which are, it is fairly difficult to stay on that upper play field.
Checkpoint 2.
Personally, I have kind of a lack of interest in a table theme such as this, because this is one of those racing sports where they are just doing lane after lane after lane, and the only thing that can possibly even be interesting is horrible multi-car crashes that then risk the lives of the racers and are not the goal. Frankly, I would be more interested in a WWE style racing sport that was just totally fake and had crashes staged, which I guess is what the Fast and the Furious series, movie series, is similar to. I should have nudged that.
Checkpoint 3.
Feels like that right out lane special should just be lit by default for as rares. It seems like one could actually hit drain out the right out lane. See, and even if you do get to the upper playfield, if you hit the right lane on the upper playfield, then you end up back where you don't want to be. It's like incredibly difficult to actually hit those drop targets. And the upper playfield draining to 2 different locations is a little random. This table basically has like a all roads lead to Mecca type mentality, where no matter which ramp you shoot, eventually you end up in that center lane, which means you eventually end up back on the right flipper. It is just like incredibly difficult to stay in this upper area. I want to go up that ramp. Can I actually make it up that ramp? Not really. I'm at like 2 million. So unless I could get multiple increases in the multiplier, And I would need to spell finish multiple times to do that.
Checkpoint fixed.
Like, that was a particularly decent ball, and yet it didn't really give me much score. And there is no ball saver in this. There is no center peg. This kind of feels like another dud one. Complete the race, which I imagine completing the race is just hitting more lighted targets.
Checkpoint 1.
The game doesn't really even highlight where the checkpoints are. We know it's one of the hundreds of blinking things we're looking at. Does that really help you?
Checkpoint 2.
Not really. So, really all that it boils down to is just keep the ball in play. I don't even think there is a multi-ball on this table, which that seems crazy for 87 to not have a multi-ball. And I can't help but just kind of assume that they stole some of the table design here from Sorcerer. Stole slash or inspired by.
Checkpoint 2.
Otherwise, I can't think of a single reason why you wouldn't have a slanted standing targets. Slanted is not any better than straight on. They're both bad when you are in the middle of the table.
Checkpoint 2.
If anything, it should be like an upside down V with a center shot in the middle that would take you to the upper part of the table.
Checkpoint 3.
It kind of sounds like rally car racing, where you would have a assistant driving with you telling you which checkpoints you just hit. But usually in rally car, if you have an assistant talking to you, they're going to tell you different curves and angles of curves and how fast to take it. And they have a whole special code system that they use. I've covered a game, a Colin McCree rally car racing series game that was that every time I exit, also I'm just wanting to get back in because I'm unsatisfied with the amount of progress I'm making, which means I'm not flipping back to the silver ball skin. That could be affecting my progress a little bit, but probably not. I can kind of see the ball in that skin as easily as I could if it was just pure silver. I would think the center at lane probably would need a gate to flip it either to the left or right, and like a lane select change. There's no ABCDs in this game. There's no rollovers really of important notes. So if you could flip left to get the ball to trigger to the left, or if you could flip right to get the ball to trigger to the right, that'd be something different to spice up the gameplay. If you had a better skill shot that you could actually hit with that launch, or more randomness with that launch. You would kind of think that a racing game would want the first action to be that you have the ball race all the way around the back of the table, so you could, instead of a tiny short shot, launch.
Point 1.
There we go, back to the silver ball. If I do magically get a much better game here, because it's silver now, that I would be shocked. Yeah, I'm already 25 minutes in and I'm really not feeling this table.
Checkpoint 2.
And that gets back to the achievement idea. In a nutshell, I have 253 achievements to go, which means last time I mentioned it, it was 255, I believe. So no real progress has even been made. But the idea of having to spend the extra time to get all the wizard goals on a table like this is a real tall order. Let's see if I short fling the ball in an attempt to have it hit the finish. I then put the ball in a weird position. And I guess I could get really good at that shot. And try and spell fuel a bunch of times. But in an effort to spell finish, you're more than likely gonna drain out. Let's do a half shot. So that was like a half launch shot, and it ended up in the exact same place. Let's do like a quarter shot. It ends up in the same spot, too. It really wouldn't make sense if they wanted you to use the plunger to do a weak shot at the beginning, since this is a thematically theme centered around speed. You would, like, ideally what you'd want is probably a spinner on this table at some point that was measuring a miles per hour. Let's just do as weak a shot as possible. There. Yeah, it gets it on the table, does nothing. But yeah, if there was a spinner right where the plunger exited, and that you're going for the highest miles per hour, that would make sense. Although, once again, I'm not sure if this is even a racing game that is about pure raw speed as much as it is tight cornering and just good long-term driving to not wear out your tires so you don't have to take as many pit stops. That's where a lot of the racing games break down to, is that they're more endurance runs and resource management. Well, I tried. You don't even get a vroom sound when you go through the one spinner.
Checkpoint 1.
Really, I'm at just like a total loss with this table. I know what you're supposed to do, sure, but I just don't feel like I'd actually accomplish it. And whatever the final finish the race checkpoint is, seems to be hard enough that you're not just going to accidentally trigger it. What would be helpful is if this was like the previous table and the finish standing targets were actually duplicated somewhere else. That way you aren't trapped hitting the same targeting the same targets. My slow reaction time on the nudging still has not really improved. If I am getting better, I'm getting better very, very slowly. I guess maybe I just don't have enough attention span to think about nudging and flippers and look at the ball. Honestly, I don't know if I could really play a pinball table that required a lot of nudging in the real world either. I may not think about it, and I might just like ruin my hips and cause incredible hip pain if I tried to nudge, because that's normally how you would nudge at the pool table, is thrusting your pelvis and hips at the table. Which brings about an interesting description I once heard about how playing pinball is an inherently sexual act because you are like manipulating the table and aiming for specific goals and thrusting at the table, which was an interesting bit of poetic license. I'm not sure I fully agree that every 10-year-old playing pinball and slamming the flipper buttons would think of it that way, or most people would even think of it that way. But this description also was from an interview from like the 70s during the free love movement and hippiedom. I believe in the same documentary in which I saw that interview, there was also some talk about how pinball was somewhat egalitarian, for lack of a better term, because it brought a lot of different types of people together. A soldier in the military versus a hippie versus a conscientious objector versus a minority versus a white person. Even males and females were brought together in the same activity a lot more than many other activities which existed around the same time. That there was never a major push to say pinball was just for guys. Whereas you do see that in the case of like the NES and video games, where that was very much pushed as a boy's toy, and less progressive, I suppose, mentality from a at the time fairly conservative Japanese company. What's weird here is that the bonus is 1 and then 2, which makes me feel like you have to spell finish multiple times to actually get to 4 and do it kind of like in a recursive way. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 1 always stays lit once it's lit. And the next time I did spell finish, I would have a 4x multiplier, if I could do that. 8 times my score right now would be close to 10 million.
Checkpoint 1.
But yeah, I thought this was going to be a much higher scoring table than it is. Yeah, you really need that multiplier. Oops. That time I didn't mean to do that. some of these standing target goals could have been improved by just hitting these, having 2 or 3 targets and asking them to hit it 3 times instead of hitting a specific one. Dumb it down a little bit for people. Because I could totally see somebody being fairly good at hitting the far left standing target or the far right standing target, and then also being pretty terrible at hitting the center targets. Because each one of those is a slightly different angle, and there's no way you're going to sweep that.
Checkpoint 3.
There's no launcher that could sweep that. There's no nudging you could do while you were launching to sweep it. Let's see now, 1 times is lit. Trying my very best here and just doing terrible. Yeah, and I just don't think there's a reason to play this table anymore. Without a pro menu, without ball control, I just don't think I could complete the race. Which, let's see what the race was. Completing 7 checkpoints in order. The specific shot that must be completed is that one. The checkpoint lamp near each of the targets will flash, indicating that they are the next shot that must be completed. But remember, I didn't have a table exploration mode here, so I wouldn't have been able to see that. Oh, and we can look in the background that picture that has always been on the far left is a picture of a billiard table, or a mirror of a billiard table in the room. As soon as the switch is hit after starting a new game, a checkpoint bonus starting at 100,000 points starts decreasing on the display until it reaches 0. Completing the first checkpoint of the race scores the current checkpoint bonus value displayed. The checkpoint bonus value resets and increases by 100,000 each time a checkpoint is completed. So basically, as soon as you start the game, you have to shoot that lane, and then you have to try and continue to shoot the checkpoints as quickly as possible, which means there is literally only one right way to play this table when you first start, and that is incredibly gross feeling to me. That sounds awful, that you put potentially $5 worth of quarters into a pinball. You're going to play 5-10 games maybe, and every single ball, your only goal is to do the exact same thing you've done previously. First checkpoint is the left side roll under, scores 1,000 points, or by the ejection hole, shooting the ejection hole. Refer to ejection hole for more details. The second checkpoint then, at that point, which I don't know if there's really a quick way to hit this, would be probably with the right flipper to bounce the ball up and into that right kicker. The third checkpoint is a top rollover, which can only be done on the upper play field, hitting the far right ramp, which I've barely ever even accomplished that. Fourth checkpoint is the in lane on the left. Fifth is hitting a standing target that I didn't even know existed on the right. Sixth is hitting that left side spot target. Which I'm not sure if there's another standing target or a slingshot or something over there. I don't know what it's pointing to. 7th is the right return lane. Once the 7th is hit, the finish lane lights, shoot the left spinner lane, then complete the top center kicker and finish the race. Complete the race the second time, lights the special on the right out lane. Once it is lit, hit the slingshots here or here. Toggles it between the right and the left. Okay. So yeah. We'll do one more game now that we know what we're supposed to be doing, but I guess now that I'm paying attention to it, that bonus is just creeping down lower and lower on the top score. And if you turn it off, you won't see it, I guess. But once I drained out to the second ball, I'm not seeing a bonus counting down now. Now it's doing the checkpoint. Alright, so we're now at checkpoint 2. Okay, checkpoint 3 then is the upper play field loop.
Checkpoint 3.
So that's checkpoint 3. Now we're looking for the right in lane, which we could get up that ramp to potentially hit. I mean, we're looking for the left in lane. Now we're hitting the spot target on the right and then the spot target on the left. Yeah, practically impossible. So the real skill shot here actually is to not get the ball into that ramp, because that takes too long. It is to shoot a weak plunger shot. That way you can hit checkpoint 1 faster. So they basically want you to do that. Even weaker than that. And then I want you to actually make a shot. Seriously, yeah, all my beginner's luck is totally drained on this table. And yeah, what was checkpoint 2 again? Doesn't matter. What a nightmare of a table, really. Like, not what I would want to play. Where you're having to constantly just ask yourself, where am I supposed to be shooting? And sure, there's flashing lights, and I guess if you eventually could figure out which flashing lights mean what, you could get around that problem. But yeah, that is a table that leaves a bitter distaste in my mouth for sure. It's just like I would probably play it 3 or 4 times in an arcade and then just leave. And frankly, I could probably watch somebody else play that pinball table and realize that I'm not that interested in it. It's definitely missing a lot compared to modern tables and tables even of the same time, not having a kickback, which most tables by 87 seem to have kickbacks, not having a ball saver, not having multi-ball, which most tables by 87 had multi-ball. Yeah, I am thoroughly unimpressed by that. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.